In the shadowed corners of our cities, behind locked doors and forgotten stairwells, lie stories no one dares to tell aloud. Stories buried under layers of concrete and silence. This is Ghosts of Asia, where urban myths breathe through flickering lights, where ancient curses awaken in modern lives, and where every hallway, every mirror, every sound after midnight might just be her trying to come back. Each tale you hear here is inspired by true whispers, local legends, censored reports, glimpses caught on CCTV. We stitch them into stories, but some say these stories stitch themselves into you. So before you press play, ask yourself, when the screen goes dark, will you be alone? Welcome to Ghosts of Asia. She's been waiting for you.
It began on a night like any other. The streets of Kuala Lumpur were still alive beneath the city's blinking sky. Neon lights bled onto wet asphalt. Delivery riders buzzed past traffic lights like bees hunting the final drops of nectar before midnight. It was humid and the rain had just stopped, the kind of heavy, clinging heat that made the inside of Faisal's helmet feel like a sauna. He'd just completed his 9th delivery of the night. His back ached, his legs were sore from riding, but there was always one more order, one more tip, one more opportunity to inch closer to his monthly quota. That's how it worked. One more. So when the ping came, sharp, sudden, cutting through the low hum of his scooter, he sighed and glanced at the screen. Order 9427F. Mi Garang, Tay Ice. Delivery address, Majestic Heights, Unit 6F. ETA, 14 minutes. He frowned. Majestic Heights? That old high-rise at the end of Jalan Tasek? He'd been there once, years ago, before it was taken off the main route due to maintenance issues. The place had a reputation among riders for being weird. Power outages, unpaid tips. One guy said he got stuck in the lift for 2 hours. But 6F? Faisal blinked. There were no such things as F floors, were there? He tapped the building pin to double-check the address, thinking maybe it was a typo. But the map zoomed in confidently on Majestic Heights Block A, Level 6F. No errors, no warnings. Still, a small knot twisted in his gut. His thumb hovered over the decline button. He could just ignore it, take a break, go home. But before he could decide, the screen glitched. The app froze for a second, flickered, then reloaded, with a strange new label above the address. 6F, service level access only. His brows furrowed deeper. Service level? For a food order? He tapped accept anyway. The timer started counting down. Majestic Heights loomed like a forgotten sentinel at the edge of the street, half swallowed by creeping vines and shadows. Faisal pulled up and parked near the rusted security post. No guard in sight, just a fan spinning above an empty chair, squeaking faintly in the humid stillness. He grabbed the brown paper bag from his box and walked toward the lobby, passing the flickering overhead light that buzzed like it had something to say but couldn't form words. The lobby was still, too still. Peeling wallpaper, old security monitors flickering with static, a faint smell, metallic, moldy, the kind of buildings carried when no one truly lived in them anymore. The elevator dinged open. Its mirrored walls cracked along the corners. Inside, he glanced at the panel. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8. No 6. Let alone 6F. He stepped back, thinking maybe he'd misread something. but the app clearly said 6F. And next to the building name, in red, it flashed again. Use service stairwell, 6F access not available by lift. Hell no, he muttered. He turned to leave. Maybe he'd just cancel and mark it as unable to access. But when he reached for his phone, the screen had gone black. He tapped the power button. Nothing. He held it longer. The screen flickered to life and displayed a message he hadn't seen before. Deliver while it's hot. Stairs or to your left. Goosebumps crept along his neck. He looked to his left and, to his surprise, a steel door stood slightly ajar, revealing a dim stairwell behind it. He hadn't noticed it before. Just get it over with, he whispered to himself. The stairwell smelled worse than the lobby. Foul, damp, like something had been left to rot. He climbed. The concrete stairs were narrow and dimly lit by a single bulb hanging far above, barely casting light beyond the second flight. The walls were stained with watermarks, and the numbers spray-painted on each landing began to confuse him. 4, 5, 5.5? Then 6, but it was scratched out. Above it, 6F, hand-painted in red. The air felt colder now. He pushed the final door open. The hallway behind it was wrong. Too narrow. Too quiet. The walls were the color of old teeth, stained and cracked. The floor was carpeted, but not with fabric, but with something that looked like synthetic mats, unevenly laid and stained with age. A red emergency light blinked steadily overhead, casting long, dancing shadows across the corridor. Faisal took a step.
The entire place smelled off, like incense and decay, like something spiritual had spoiled. Unit 6F was at the end. He walked slowly. Each step echoed longer than it should have, as if the hallway stretched every sound, holding on to it like a memory. When he reached the door, he hesitated. It was an old wooden door, scratched. The number 6F had been nailed on with thin brass letters, crooked, tarnished, like they'd been reused from some older door. He knocked. Nothing. He knocked again. "Hello? Food delivery." Still no answer. Just as he turned to leave, the door creaked and opened slightly by itself, just wide enough for him to see inside. The room was dark, not pitch black, but dim and silent. The air inside was unnaturally cold, like the whole place had been refrigerated. Dust floated in the air like it was underwater. The only light came from the hallway's red emergency bulb, casting everything in a sickly hue. Faisal stepped inside. "Hello?" he called again. No answer. He took 2 cautious steps forward. The floor creaked beneath him. The walls were bare, the windows covered in old newspaper clippings, headlines from 2003, obituaries, floods, missing persons. None of it made sense. And in the center of the room, a bowl, just sitting there. A clean white ceramic bowl filled with freshly steamed rice, steam still rising, curling softly in the cold air. No table, no chair, no person. Just the bowl and the silence. Faisal's instinct screamed. He needed proof of delivery, maybe a photo. He took out his phone. It was working now. The screen lit up, camera open. He snapped a picture. The shutter sound echoed far too loud in the dead air. He lowered the phone and looked at the photo. What he saw made his blood freeze. In the photo, crouched in the far right corner of the room, was a figure, a woman,
long black hair veiling her face, her skin pale and wet-looking. Her limbs were wrong, arms too long, elbows bent backward, knees jutting the wrong way. She looked like something that had been folded and crumpled into the shape of a person. Faisal looked up. Nothing in the corner, just shadows. But in the photo, she was still there, and her head was slowly turning toward the camera. He didn't think. He ran. Out the door, down the hall, down the stairwell 3 steps at a time, bursting through the lobby doors into the thick, wet air of the night. He didn't stop until he was outside, panting, heart thudding against his ribs like it wanted out. He looked at the building one last time. There were no lights on the 6th floor, no red glow, no sign of 6F. At the security post, he found a different guard, an older man, sipping kopi from a styrofoam cup. "Excuse me," Faisal gasped. "There's something wrong with Unit 6F. Someone's inside." The man stared at him for a long moment, then said flatly, "Son, this building skips the 6th floor. It always has. We go from 5 to 7. Check the lift if you don't believe me." Faisal blinked. "But I went up the stairs." "There is no 6F, the man interrupted slowly. "You must have gone to the wrong unit." "No," Faisal whispered, shaking his head. "It was there. I saw it. I have a photo." He pulled out his phone, opened the gallery. The most recent photo was gone, replaced by an error icon. No media found. His hands began to tremble. Later that night, as he sat on the edge of his bed, staring at his blank screen, trying to convince himself it was all in his head, the ping came again. Order 9436B. Mi goreng and te ice. Majestic Heights, Unit 6F. Same order, same address, same name. He pressed decline. The screen froze. Then a new message appeared. "You already accepted. She's waiting." Something about the message felt alive. "You already accepted. She's waiting." It didn't feel like an app notification. It didn't vibrate or blink the way food delivery apps usually do. It just appeared, silently, as if the phone itself whispered it into his hands. Faisal stared at the screen for several minutes. Sweat trickled down his temple, even though the night air was cooler now. He tried powering off the phone. It wouldn't turn off. He held the button longer. Still nothing. He tossed it onto the desk and stood up, pacing. "No," he muttered. "No way." He didn't want to go back. He shouldn't go back. But even as his mind said no, something deeper, colder, curled inside him, pulling at his chest like a hook embedded just beneath the skin. And he felt it. She really was waiting. He told himself he was only going back to cancel the order in person. That maybe the app bugged out. Maybe the last delivery hadn't gone through properly. If he could get one of the guards to sign something, anything, he could mark it complete and walk away. He grabbed his helmet and left. Majestic Heights looked worse than before. Maybe it was the fog rolling in, but the building now seemed taller. The edges of the rooftop blurred into the sky like a smudge on a mirror. The vines that coiled up the cement walls had grown overnight, as if the building wanted to disappear. The lobby was empty again. No guard, just the soft whir of the ceiling fan and the faint hum of electricity. He tried the elevator. The panel looked the same. 1 to 5, then 7, no 6. But now, there was a small, freshly printed sticker in the corner of the panel. Service level access. Use stairwell C. He hadn't noticed that before. He didn't want to. The steel door to stairwell C groaned open. The air inside hit him like a wall, thick, damp, metallic. like rust and something decaying behind drywall. It clung to his skin, crawled up his nose, sat in his lungs. Each step upward felt heavier than the last. His legs ached, his spine tensed. Something about the walls felt closer than before, as if the stairwell itself was narrowing with every flight. He passed the scratched-out 6 and stopped in front of the blood-red 6F hand-painted on the wall. His fingers trembled as they reached for the door handle. It opened too easily. No resistance, as if the door had been waiting for him. The hallway beyond hadn't changed, not in structure, but something was different in the air. The red emergency light blinked steadily, and with each pulse, the shadows seemed to move. Not flicker, move, like something was pacing just out of sight, waiting for him to enter. The smell was stronger now, rot and incense, something that had died and something that wanted to prey over it. Faisal took a single step forward, then another. The floor beneath him groaned, not like wood, but like something deeper, like the building itself exhaled beneath his feet. The hallway wasn't silent this time. There was a sound, faint, like cloth being dragged across the floor, or nails scratching the inside of a wall. He passed by the first door. It had no number. The second door was sealed with a metal crossbar. The third, Unit 6F, stood open just a crack. He didn't knock this time. The apartment was colder. It hit him instantly, like stepping into a walk-in freezer. The air pressed against his skin, wrapped around his throat. This wasn't natural cold. It was spiritual, intentional. The layout had shifted. The furniture was different. There was a broken wooden chair in the corner now, an overturned incense burner in the middle of the room. The newspapers were gone, but a stained calendar still hung on the wall, dated April 2003. The rice bowl remained, still steaming, as if someone had just placed it there. Faisal took a step in and froze. A faint click echoed behind him. He spun around. The door was closed. He stared at it, heart pounding. Then he heard it. Breathing. Not his. It was coming from the hallway inside the unit, a narrow corridor that branched off the main room and led deeper into the flat. The shadows there were thicker, like they'd been layered over time. He should have left, but he didn't. Something pulled at his curiosity, at his dread. He walked towards the corridor. The breathing stopped. He peeked around the corner. The hallway stretched longer than it should have, impossible for the size of the unit. The walls were covered in charcoal drawings, dozens of them, crude sketches of the same woman, long hair covering her face, arms too long, hands dragging behind her. Some drawings had her crouched, some had her hanging. One had her staring directly out of the page, with no eyes. Faisal took a step back. Something shifted at the end of the hallway. A door creaked open, and from the shadows, something began to crawl out. He couldn't move. A long, bony hand gripped the wall, then another. A figure emerged, twitching, clicking, the sound of bones grinding together. The woman, exactly as she had appeared in the photo, only this time she was real and crawling towards him. Faisal bolted. He didn't look back. He didn't breathe. He flung the apartment door open and ran down the hall. The emergency light flickered more violently now, bursting white for brief seconds, and in every flash he saw her figure at the edge of his vision. She was following him, but never running, just appearing, closer, closer. He burst into the stairwell and slammed the steel door shut behind him. He didn't stop until he was outside again, gasping for air, his legs aching like they'd been twisted backwards. It was nearly dawn. The city was starting to stir, unaware of what clung to the upper floors of Majestic Heights. He opened his phone. It worked now. He checked the gallery again. The photo was back, but it was different. She was standing now, closer to the lens, and behind her, on the wall, was a new charcoal drawing of him.
Faisal didn't sleep that night. He couldn't. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the hallway again, the flickering red light, the shift in shadows, the woman's twisted body crawling toward him like something born of grief and bone. Her limbs weren't just wrong, they were intentional, the way a puppet might bend if its strings had snapped and someone tried to keep dancing anyway. But what haunted him most wasn't her face. It was the feeling that she knew him, that when she looked at him, she recognized something. The sky turned from black to gray to gold. Morning light spilled weakly through the gaps in Faisal's window blinds, but it offered no comfort. His room, once messy but warm, now felt sterile, cold, foreign. He hadn't turned on his phone since escaping Majestic Heights. It sat silently on the edge of his desk like a ticking bomb. Eventually, trembling, he reached for it. The screen lit up instantly. The app was still open, still frozen on the delivery confirmation screen, still flashing the same words. "You already accepted. She's waiting." Faisal forced himself to swipe it closed. Then he opened the gallery, and there it was, the photo. The one he'd taken the first night, the one that had vanished, then returned. But now it had changed. He zoomed in slowly, afraid to what he'd see. The woman was standing this time, no longer crouched, her face still veiled by thick strands of black hair, her neck twisted unnaturally. Her hands dangled at her sides like dead weight. But behind her, something was drawn on the wall in black charcoal. A figure. A man. He squinted. It was him. The figure on the wall was wearing his uniform, the green and black windbreaker with the courier logo, the same helmet slung under one arm. It wasn't just a rough sketch. It was detailed, deliberate. And next to it, scrawled in small, spidery writing, "He saw me." Faisal dropped the phone. It clattered to the floor, the sound sharp in the silence of his room. He backed away from it like it might crawl toward him. He had to tell someone. He needed to do something, anything to break the growing sense of isolation gripping his chest. He scrolled through his contacts. Friends, colleagues, cousins. No one would believe him. They'd say he was sleep-deprived, hallucinating, overworked. But there was one person who might understand. Zach. Zach was a fellow rider, older, more experienced, and well known among the delivery crowd for being superstitious. He carried talismans on his keychain, avoided cemeteries, and never delivered to any address that ended in 4. He met him at the Mamak stall near the gas station. Zach was already there, sipping coffee and watching traffic pass with the expression of someone who'd seen enough of the city to stop being surprised by it. Faisal sat down and explained everything. The order, the missing floor, the woman, the photo. Zach didn't interrupt once. When Faisal finished, there was a long silence. Then Zach leaned forward. "You went to Majestic Heights?" Faisal nodded. "Unit 6F. Zach's eyes narrowed. "There is no 6F, he said. "That building skips the 6th floor, always has." "I know," Faisal whispered, "but it was there. I climbed the stairs. I saw it." Zach stared at him for a moment, then reached into his pocket
and pulled out a small, faded newspaper clipping. He unfolded it slowly and pushed it across the table. The headline read, "Construction worker dies in elevator shaft collapse, Majestic Heights, project halted." Date, April 9th, 2003. The article mentioned a worker who fell from the 6th floor during an inspection. The company shut down construction temporarily, but resumed later, skipping the 6th floor entirely out of respect, superstition, public image. "What does this have to do with the woman?" Faisal asked. Zach sipped his coffee, then said quietly, "They never found the body." The words hung in the air like smoke. Faisal felt a chill crawl up his back. "What do you mean?" "They poured concrete over it by mistake," he replied. "The crew was pressured to finish fast. They covered it up, sealed the floor, told everyone it never existed." "Then what did I see?" Zach didn't answer. Instead, he asked, "Did you eat anything near there? Did you take anything?" "No," Faisal said. "I just took a photo of the rice bowl and her." Zach's eyes widened. "You took a photo?" Faisal nodded, slowly. Zach swore under his breath. "You were not supposed to see her. That's the deal. You offer the food. You don't look. You don't stay. You don't photograph. She's tied to ritual, bound to the forgotten offering." Faisal's voice cracked. "What happens now?" Zach looked at him, his expression unreadable. "She'll come back because you broke the silence." That night, Faisal tried to delete the photo. The phone wouldn't let him. Every time he tapped delete, the screen glitched, the app crashed, the image remained. Worse, the image began to change. Each time he opened it, the woman had moved closer. Her head tilted a little more. Her hands began to rise, and behind her, more drawings appeared on the walls. Other riders, their uniforms, their faces, all charcoal smears, and his, always in the center. Then came the call. A number with no digits, just unknown. He didn't answer. But the voicemail came through. He played it. There was no voice, just the sound of something breathing through wet cloth. Then the sound of nails dragging across concrete. Then a whisper. "Come back." Faisal deleted the voicemail, or thought he did. But when he checked his notifications an hour later, a new message appeared, not from any app, just a single full-screen text. "Don't make her wait." His phone turned off on its own. He stayed awake, curled on his mattress, listening for sounds he couldn't explain, knocks that came from inside the walls, soft tapping at the window, even though he lived on the 4th floor. And then, just past 3 a.m., he opened his eyes to find the door to his bedroom wide open. He never left it open. At the threshold, something shifted in the dark, a figure just beyond view. But there was no sound, just the overwhelming feeling of being watched. He didn't sleep. And in the morning, there was a new order in the app. Same name, same meal, same address. Unit 6F. This time, no option to decline. Only one button remained. Accept.
It was like waking into someone else's nightmare. Faisal sat frozen on the edge of his bed, the screen of his phone glowing faintly in the dark room. The rest of the apartment was silent, too silent. No cars outside, no neighbors, not even the usual whir of the fan in the corner. Only the hum of the screen. Accept. No cancel, no back button, no exit. Just those 6 letters, soft white against a black background, like the app had turned into something else entirely. He tapped the power button. The screen went dark. He exhaled. But then it lit up again. Accept. The phone had turned itself back on. He dropped it like it was hot metal and stepped back. A cold sweat clung to his back. The room felt smaller, the air thinner. He went to the bathroom and splashed cold water on his face, gripping the sink like it might anchor him to reality. This isn't real, he told himself. Apps don't work like that. Phones don't work like that. People don't just vanish. But he'd seen the hallway. He'd seen her. And the photo, the one that changed itself? Where was the logic in that? Later that morning, he made a decision. He walked to the building management office for Majestic Heights, not the guardhouse, the main office tucked behind the car park, where tenants came to pay bills and file complaints. He wanted records. Anything. Floor plans, construction history, a staff member who might have heard of 6F. Something normal to hold on to. A woman in her 50s sat behind a desk cluttered with files and half-drunk Nescafe packets. Her name tag read, Mdom Kamaria, admin. She looked up as he stepped in. Yes? I'm following up on a delivery complaint. There is a unit, 6F, that I delivered to, but the customer hasn't marked it complete. She frowned. 6F? That doesn't exist. Faisal nodded slowly. I know, that's what I thought, but I went there. It was real. I climbed the stairs. Kamaria folded her arms. Majestic Heights doesn't have a 6th floor. It was removed from the plan, cultural reasons. She pulled a dusty floor directory from a drawer and flipped it open. Block A. Level 5, Level 7, no Level 6. It skips like most Chinese buildings skip 4. 6 is considered unlucky by some. The project halted in 2003 after a death. Superstition got the best of them. Faisal leaned in. What about service levels? She shook her head. We don't allow access to that part of the stairwell. It was sealed years ago. The contractors, they walled off the landing. No unit there. Never was. He stared at her. But I was in the unit. Kamaria tilted her head. Young man, are you sure you weren't dreaming? He left empty-handed. His phone vibrated again the moment he stepped outside. Another ping. Delivery reminder, Unit 6F. Estimated arrival, 13 minutes. You're running late. He tapped it open. There was no map, no driver tools, only a loading wheel spinning endlessly, and underneath it, a message. She's still waiting. Panicking, Faisal opened his photo gallery again. Maybe, just maybe, he could show the picture to someone, Zach, the press, anyone. Maybe if someone else saw her, it would make all of this real. But the image was gone. Not corrupted, not glitched, just gone. In its place was a single gray square. No file name, no timestamp, just a placeholder icon and the message, File not found. He scrolled further. Every photo he'd taken at Majestic Heights, even the delivery receipt screenshots, had vanished. The phone buzzed again. This time the message appeared full screen. Do not delete what belongs to her. He drove back to his flat. He didn't remember starting the engine or turning onto the main road.
Everything passed in a blur. The city looked wrong, like it was still awake but somehow empty. Too quiet for midday, too still for traffic. Once home, he turned off his phone and pulled the battery out. Then he grabbed a piece of paper and wrote down everything he could remember from the unit. The door, the drawings, the bowl of rice, the scratching inside the walls, and her. He didn't know why he felt so urgent about it, only that he had to write it down before it disappeared from memory too. That's what it felt like the experience was fading, the way dreams do when you wake up. He called Zach again. No answer. Then a second call, this time from an unknown number. Faisal hesitated and answered. Static. Then a voice. Not hers, a man's. Breathy, shaky, far away. You went back. Faisal's throat dried instantly. Who is this? You saw her. You photographed her. You marked yourself. Marked. A long pause. Don't open the door when she knocks. The call cut out. Faisal stared at the phone. Then a knock echoed at his own door. He froze. Another knock. Soft, deliberate. He took a step toward the door. Then another. The air near it was ice cold. He pressed his eye to the peer hole. Nothing. But as he turned to walk away, a third knock came, this time from the back door. He didn't have a back door. He slept in the hallway that night, lights on, phone powered down, knife in hand. But sleep never really came, only the occasional feeling that someone was just past the edge of his vision, behind the curtains, under the bed, inside the mirror. The next day, he received a system notification. Account status flagged. Incomplete delivery. Order 9436B, 6F. Action required. He opened the app in disbelief. There it was again. Same name, same order, same floor. No cancellation option, no help button, only one path forward. He scrolled down. The address blinked once, then changed. Not just Unit 6F anymore. It now read, Unit 6F, bring it yourself. Faisal stared at the screen until his vision blurred. He realized what it meant. This wasn't a delivery anymore. It was an offering, and he was the one being delivered.
It was raining again. Not the sharp kind of rain that cleared the air and cooled the ground, but the slow, endless drizzle that made everything damp, heavy, tired. The kind of rain that felt sad, like the sky was weeping for something that couldn't be undone. Faisal sat on his motorbike beneath the shelter outside his flat, helmet resting in his lap, water pooling at his feet. He hadn't spoken to anyone in almost 24 hours. No friends, no messages, no notifications, except one, the only one that mattered now. The delivery order to Unit 6F had returned, just like before. Only now, there was no food listed. Just a location, just a time, just him. He tried everything, deleting the app, resetting the phone, changing SIM cards. Nothing worked. The moment he turned the phone back on, it reinstalled itself. 6F, she's waiting. Deliver yourself. It wasn't a bug anymore. It was a curse. And deep down, Faisal knew the truth. It wouldn't stop. Not until he went back. He rode in silence. The city passed him by, unfamiliar despite its familiarity. The neon lights seemed duller, the sounds muffled. It felt like he was riding through an imitation of Kuala Lumpur, a hollow shell of the world he used to know. By the time he reached majestic heights, the rain had stopped, but the ground was still wet. Everything shimmered under the orange streetlights like it had been dipped in oil. The building stood like a corpse, tall, gray, and sagging at the edges. No lights on, no guards outside. Just waiting. This time, Faisal didn't hesitate. He walked through the rusted entrance, past the security desk where no one sat. The elevator, as always, refused to acknowledge a 6th floor. And the sticker was still there, though more faded now. Service level access, stairwell C. The stairwell door groaned as he pushed it open. It smelled worse, like burnt hair and stagnant water. But something else too. A trace of perfume. Old, floral. The kind your grandmother kept in glass bottles with faded gold lettering. The kind that lingered long after death. The steps to 6F felt longer now, like the building had added new stairs just to slow him down. His legs ached, his chest tightened. He kept one hand on the wall to steady himself, but the concrete felt soft, damp, like flesh beneath thin skin. He reached the 6F landing. The red paint on the number looked fresh again, still dripping, still wet. He touched it. It stained his finger. Not paint. The door to 6F opened before he touched it. It swung inward with a soft creak, revealing the hallway beyond, darker than before, as if the building itself had dimmed for her. Faisal stepped through. The red light above flickered. Once, twice, then died. Darkness. A silence so complete it made his ears ring. He pulled out his phone, turned on the flashlight. The beam was weak, flickering, like it didn't want to stay alive here. He moved forward, heart pounding, each step echoing in that narrow, awful corridor. The walls were different now, not just stained. They were covered in charcoal drawings, hundreds of them, layered on top of one another. Faces, limbs, screams rendered in black dust. And in the middle of every drawing, the woman, sometimes standing, sometimes crouched, sometimes looking directly out, her face still hidden. He reached the door to Unit 6F. It was wide open now, and this time something was different. The air inside no longer felt cold. It felt hungry, like the room had been holding its breath since his last visit, and now exhaled all at once as he stepped inside. The layout had changed again. Gone were the newspapers, the incense burner, the chair. In their place, a mirror, tall, ancient, cracked, covered in red string and faded paper seals, like it had been part of some forgotten ritual. And beside it, a small table, and on that table, a bowl of rice, still steaming, still untouched. He stepped closer. The mirror's surface shimmered, and for a moment he didn't see his own reflection. He saw her. She stood behind the glass, motionless. Her hair hung in wet curtains over her face. her hands pressed gently to the other side of the mirror, fingers long, nails blackened, curled like hooks. Faisal didn't breathe. He couldn't. She tilted her head, not in curiosity, but in recognition. And then, the worst part, she began to smile. It wasn't a human smile. It stretched too far, too slow. The skin cracked where it should have stretched. Her mouth opened wider than it should have, past her cheeks, almost to her ears. And from within it, a sound. Not a scream, not a whisper, a moan, low and wet, like someone crying underwater. The mirror began to ripple, and behind her more figures appeared, crawling across the mirrored floor, dozens, maybe hundreds, all like her, all eyeless, all marked with delivery logos, helmets, courier bags, riders. Faisal stumbled back, heart about to split in his chest. He turned to flee, but the door slammed shut behind him. He was trapped. The walls groaned. The drawings began to peel themselves from the concrete, fluttering like leaves in a wind that didn't exist. One by one, they tore off and floated through the air, circling him. And then, the rice bowl shattered. A shriek tore through the room, not from her, from the mirror itself. It cracked, spiderwebbing from corner to corner. The paper seals burned away in a hiss of smoke, and from the fracture, her hand reached out. Real, wet, dead. It grabbed the edge of the mirror frame and pulled. Faisal screamed. He turned, kicked at the door. It wouldn't budge. The red strings that had once sealed the mirror now writhed on the floor like worms crawling toward him, wrapping around his ankles. He fell, hard, hit his chin, tasted blood. He scrambled backward. She was halfway out now, her body folding through the glass like it was liquid, and behind her, the other figures, following, one by one. Faisal pulled something from his pocket, instinctively, a lighter, a gift from his late father, old, silver, still working. Without thinking, he flicked it. The small flame danced. The spirit stopped, just for a second. He remembered something Zach had said. She's bound to the offering. Faisal looked at the shattered bowl. The rice still sat in clumps on the floor. He took a deep breath and lit it. The rice caught slowly, then burst. Smoke filled the room, thick and acrid. The woman screamed, a shrill, angry sound that shattered the mirror completely. The pieces fell inward, not outward, disappearing into a void that wasn't there before. The wind stopped. The light flickered back on. The strings went still, and she was gone. Faisal lay there for a long time, staring at the broken frame, the floor, the ceiling, his hands, all still shaking. But it was over. At least, that's what he thought. Until he saw his reflection again, not in the mirror, but in the shattered phone screen on the floor. And behind him, the faint outline of someone standing just at the edge of the frame, still smiling, still waiting.
Faisal didn't remember how he got home. He remembered fire. He remembered her hand breaking through the mirror. He remembered the scream, a sound too old to belong to anything still living. And he remembered the moment she vanished, like smoke collapsing into itself. Then darkness. Then light. Then waking up in his own bed. The sheets were damp with sweat. His clothes were still on. And in his hand, he still held the lighter. That small silver thing
tarnished now, warm to the touch, the only thing that worked. The phone was shattered, completely dead. But even without it, he felt it. She was still here. Not in the room, not behind the door, inside him. Like she'd stitched something beneath his skin and left part of herself behind. Faisal stumbled into the bathroom, heart pounding. He turned on the light, looked in the mirror, and blinked. Something was wrong. It was subtle, easy to miss, but it was there. His reflection didn't move exactly when he did. A half-second delay, a flicker, a hesitation. He tilted his head slowly. The reflection did too, but the motion lagged, like buffering video. Then, a smile. Faisal recoiled. His face hadn't smiled, but the reflection had. Small, crooked, just for a moment, like she was trying him on. He grabbed a towel and covered the mirror, then another. Then he yanked the wall calendar off its hook and draped it over the bathroom cabinet, anything to stop the glass from watching him. He didn't eat that day, didn't move much, just sat on the floor in silence, listening to the creaks, the knocks, the scratching that came from the walls every time he almost drifted to sleep. It wasn't random, it was rhythmic, like a chant, like breathing. That night, he lit every candle he could find. He sat in the middle of his room, the lighter in one hand, the old courier bag in the other, the one he hadn't used since the first 6F order. He opened it. Inside, the broken phone was gone. In its place, something wrapped in cloth. He unwrapped it slowly. A mirror shard, one of hers. He didn't put it there. He almost threw it away, but then something told him not to. Not a voice, just a feeling, like a hand on his shoulder, a nudge. He stared at the shard. It pulsed in his hand, not physically, but visually. The reflection shimmered, warped, showed things that weren't in the room, brief flashes, a hallway, a bowl, a drawing, a shadow, and then a child. It was only a second, maybe less, but it hit him like a blow. A small girl, maybe 7 or 8, sitting in a dark room, her eyes wide with terror. Behind her, the woman, standing, watching, stretching her hands towards her shoulders. Then the mirror went dark again. Faisal stumbled backward, dropping the shard. It didn't break. He stared at it for minutes. She wasn't just haunting him. She was showing him something. Why? He thought back to what Zach had told him. She's bound to the offering. You marked yourself when you saw her. But what if she wasn't just a spirit? What if she was a story? One that had never been told properly, and now was demanding to be remembered. The next morning, Faisal went back to the only place that still held traces of truth, Zach's apartment. He knocked. No answer. The door was slightly open. He called out. No response. He stepped inside. Zach's apartment was cold, not physically, spiritually. The air felt stagnant, old. The kitchen light flickered above. Moth wings danced in the air. On the dining table lay a stack of papers, old newspaper clippings, notes, handwritten symbols drawn in circles. Faisal moved closer. He recognized the building photo instantly. Majestic heights, but older, from the early 2000s. The photo showed it under construction, but on the margin, someone had written in black ink, 6F equals ritual floor, forbidden, incomplete. Another note, beneath a printed headline. Wife of foreman missing, last seen on site. And beside that, a photograph. Blurry, low resolution, but unmistakable. The same woman. Long hair, face covered, hands too long. Faisal stared at the page in disbelief. Then he noticed something else. A name, scrawled in red, almost hidden in the corner of one sheet. Suri. He took the papers and left. He needed answers, and there was only one place left to find them. Back at home, he searched online. The foreman's name was there, one of the site engineers for Majestic Heights in 2003. A scandal had briefly surfaced before being buried under corporate restructuring and lawsuits. His wife had gone missing on site, vanished during an inspection. Only he claimed she was there that day. No records, no witnesses, no body. He was blamed, fired, then disappeared months later. Faisal sat back, trying to piece it together. What if she never left the building? What if they buried her beneath it? What if the 6th floor, the one sealed off, erased from the blueprints, was hers? And what if the rituals weren't meant to summon her, but to contain her? He retrieved the shard of mirror, held it up, and waited. Nothing. Then it changed. Not just the girl again, but something behind her. A room filled with burnt offerings, red twine, broken dolls, Buddhist seals. And on the wall, written over and over again, "Don't stop the ritual. Never stop the ritual. Never stop." The image vanished. Faisal dropped the shard. He's shaking. All of it made horrible, perfect sense. They had tried to entrap her. The floor was a prison. An offering had to be made again and again to keep her calm, to keep her fed. Not food, people, delivery riders, each one marked, each one erased. One forgotten ritual, one missed offering, and the mirror broke. Now she was loose, and she had chosen him. Not to kill, not to chase, but to finish it. As night fell, his phone, long dead, lit up once more. No apps, no signal, just one single message in white on black. You saw her. You carry her. You are the ritual now.
Rain again. As if the city couldn't wash itself clean. Faisal stood outside Majestic Heights for the 3rd time, helmet in one hand, Zach's documents in the other. He stared up at the building's cracked concrete bones, at the vines that clung to it like veins, at the rows of silent windows reflecting a colorless sky. But now, he no longer looked at it like a building. He looked at it like a wound dressed in steel and paint, a wound they tried to build over, a wound that never healed. He took the long way around the complex, searching not for the usual entrance, but for the bones beneath the skin. Old scaffolding, abandoned service panels, forgotten fire escapes. He found one, behind a locked maintenance gate, rusted shut and half covered in black mold. With a screwdriver from his bike kit and a trembling resolve, he forced it open. The gate gave way with a sharp screech, like the building didn't want to be disturbed, but he entered anyway. The underbelly of Majestic Heights smelled like rot and old rain. Pipes ran along the walls like arteries. Faint buzzing came from somewhere deeper, maybe electrical, maybe not. He followed the faint spray-painted markings left by workers long gone. Lift shaft B, water line east, ritual hall. No, not that last one. He stepped closer.
It wasn't in spray paint. It was scratched into the concrete. Crude, thin, carved. Ritual hall. Do not open. He moved deeper. The walls turned from gray to brown with damp. The light from his phone flickered again, a familiar sickly pulse. He passed an old construction sign, half buried in dust. Level 6, closed for structural integrity testing. Do not enter. But someone had. The tape was cut, and beyond it, a hidden stairwell, one that led up. As he climbed, he imagined the layers peeling away, the cement, the silence, the lies. Each step felt heavier, like he was walking into the lungs of the building, where it still held its breath after 20 years. He emerged into a forgotten service floor, 6F, but not like before. No flickering lights, no hallway, just an open space. Concrete columns, cracked tiles, and in the center, a circle. It wasn't paint, it was ash. A ritual circle, large and deliberate, scorched into the floor. Charcoal symbols surrounded it. Burnt offerings in tin bowls lay scattered nearby, some broken, others still holding the remnants of rice, coins, and old joss paper. Around the room, on every wall, were fragments of shattered mirrors, all arranged to face the center, all covered in red string, bound with yellowing prayer slips. This wasn't an apartment. It was a containment chamber. Faisal stepped into the circle, and a low vibration hummed under his feet. Not sound, not heat, something older. The moment he stood in the center, he understood. They didn't build this floor for living. They didn't even intend to finish it. They buried her here. One of Zach's papers had mentioned something about mirror ceiling rites, an obscure ritual used in Southeast Asian traditions to trap vengeful spirits by turning their gaze inward. Mirrors were meant to reflect them back into themselves. The red string bound the spirit, the offerings fed it, but the ritual was never completed. Faisal knelt beside one of the bowls. He lifted a charred joss stick and read the name carved beneath the tin. Suri, the same name from the article. The missing woman, the wife of the foreman, the woman in the mirror. And suddenly, it clicked. She wasn't haunting them because of rage. She was starving. She'd been trapped in a ritual designed to quiet her grief, not heal it. And when the offering stopped, the mirror cracked, and the grief became hunger. Faisal stood. The pieces fit now. Majestic Heights had skipped the 6th floor in blueprints, but physically it existed, hidden, condemned, never demolished, because they couldn't, because the floor wasn't a construction error. It was a spiritual cage, and someone had opened it. He turned back toward the exit, but something blocked the exit. A figure, faint, almost invisible, like smoke trapped in a shape. She didn't move, didn't reach, just stood. Faisal held his ground. "I know who you are," he said quietly. She twitched, a subtle jerk like her body was remembering how to move. "You carry my memory." Faisal's throat tightened. He nodded. She stepped back, and as she did, a gust of cold air swept past him. The way out, cleared. Later that night, Faisal sat with the mirror shard on his floor again. This time, when he looked into it, he saw no shadows, just a room, familiar. The ritual floor, but clean, whole. And in the center, a woman, not monstrous, not bent, just kneeling. Hands folded, eyes closed, grieving. The screen of his repaired phone lit up again. No app this time, just a message burned into the background. She isn't done, but she chose you. Faisal whispered into the silence. What do I do now? No reply, just the sound of footsteps moving above him, right where level 6 should be.
It had been quiet for 3 days. No messages, no calls, no knocks. Faisal hadn't slept much, but he hadn't been haunted either, not like before. No flickering lights, no shadows pacing his hallway, no whispers echoing from the mirror shard he kept wrapped in cloth on his shelf. But the silence wasn't comfort. It was pressure, like the calm between breaths, or the moment between lightning and thunder. He knew it wasn't over. He just didn't know what was next until the dream. In it, he was back inside 6F, but the unit had changed again. The walls were now lined with doors, dozens of them, some nailed shut, some sealed with wax, some covered in red cloth. But one door stood unmarked, not glowing, not locked, just waiting. He opened it in the dream. Inside was a child's bedroom, dusty, dim, airless. A single lamp flickered in the corner. A porcelain doll sat on the floor, its eyes cracked, its dress covered in mold. And on the walls were names, burned into the paint. Not written, carved. Dozens, maybe hundreds. All riders, all forgotten, except for one name in the center of the wall, written bigger than the rest. Faisal. He woke up gasping. He didn't hesitate this time. By sundown, he was back at Majestic Heights. No delivery app, no rice bowl. Just him, the mirror shard, the lighter, and a gut-deep certainty that something needed to be finished. The stairwell to 6F was colder now, stiller, almost respectful. He reached the landing. The hallway was dark again, but this time, it didn't resist him. It felt like the building had accepted him. Or maybe she had. He stepped inside Unit 6F, and there it was, the door from the dream. It was real, not symbolic, not imagined. Real wood, real dust, unmarked, slightly ajar and cold. A chill emanated from the crack like breath from a tomb. He pushed it open. It creaked. Inside was exactly what he'd seen. A child's room long abandoned, faded wallpaper, a broken shelf, a tiny mattress on the floor, and in the center, the same porcelain doll. Only this time, the doll's head was turned, facing him. He stepped in. Every inch of his skin tingled. The air was thick with something unseen. He crouched beside the doll and picked it up. Its arms were limp, cloth body sagging, a torn ribbon around the neck. He turned it over. Something was stitched into its back, in red thread. Don't stop the ritual. He set the doll down and turned his attention to the walls. The names were still there, etched deep into the surface. Some in English, some in Chinese, some in Tamil. Different languages, different lives, but all riders. One of them even had a date next to it, 2005, then 2007, 2013, 2019, all evenly spaced. Then 2023, the last one, followed by a blank line, waiting. Faisal stepped back, heart pounding. This wasn't just a haunting, it was a pattern. Every few years, someone was drawn in, marked, and offered. Whoever failed ended up on the wall. Whoever succeeded, that part wasn't clear. Suddenly, the door slammed shut behind him. The bulb in the corner popped, plunging the room into darkness. Then, the faintest sound. A laugh. High-pitched, childlike, but layered. Too many voices at once. He turned slowly. The porcelain doll was no longer on the floor. It was sitting on the mattress now, upright, facing him. Its head tilted slightly, and behind it, the shadows began to move. She stepped out of them, not crawling this time, standing, tall, twisted, but elegant in the way grief sometimes is, soft but crushing. Her hair floated as if underwater, her face still obscured. She raised one hand and pointed at the doll, then the wall, then him. No words, just the gesture, over and over. He didn't run. He couldn't. Something in him understood. She didn't want vengeance. She wanted to finish what had been started. Faisal took the doll in both hands. He reached into his pocket, lit the lighter. The flame trembled but held. He brought it to the doll's feet, waited. The flame caught slowly. Fabric blackened. Smoke filled the room, and the doll began to scream. Not a doll's scream, a child's scream, piercing, agonized, but not evil. Remembered. The walls trembled, the floor cracked, names on the walls began to burn. One by one they ignited, as if their owners had finally been released. The porcelain melted, the thread burst, the air turned hot, and through the flames, she watched. Still silent, still standing, but fading. As the doll crumbled to ash, the door behind him creaked open. A gust of cool, cleansing wind swept through the room, and she was gone. Faisal collapsed to his knees, breathing hard, eyes burning, hands shaking. The room was still now, empty. No names, no doll, just silence. Not dead silence, peaceful silence. He stepped back into the hallway of 6F, and for the first time, it looked normal. No flickering lights, no crawling shadows, just an old, unfinished floor. Forgotten. Finally, free. When he reached the lobby, the front doors were open. The sun was rising. Orange light bled across the concrete floors. And for the first time in weeks, Faisal felt human again. But as he walked back to his motorbike, he paused. On the far wall of the guard post, smeared faintly in dust and ash, were two handprints, small, delicate, and next to them, a line of red thread, still hanging, still swaying, as if something had just left.
She was gone, but not forgotten. Faisal had returned home with a strange stillness in his chest. Not calm, exactly, not relief, but stillness, as though something heavy had stopped shifting inside him. He hadn't slept, didn't want to. Sleep felt unsafe now, not because of fear, because of memory. And what haunted him now wasn't the image of her face, because he'd never fully seen it. It was the feeling she had left behind, like the echo of a scream in a silent room, or the aftertaste of something bitter on the tongue. He didn't know her name, not really, but he knew her now. And in the deepest corner of his soul, he understood what she was. A god that no one prayed to anymore. The next day, Faisal returned to see Zach. This time, Zach answered the door. He looked older, tired, as if he had been waiting too. "You saw her, didn't you?" Zach asked softly. Faisal nodded. Zach didn't look surprised. He stepped aside and let him in. The apartment hadn't changed, still filled with papers, dried incense, and yellowing photos of temples and abandoned buildings. But something was different in the air. Lighter, less cursed, as if the presence that once lingered here had gone elsewhere. "She was part of a forgotten practice," Zach said, pouring hot tea. "Not a ghost, not a demon, something older, something that feeds on neglect." Faisal listened in silence. She was what they used to call a penungu ritual, a guardian spirit tied to a space. But the ritual changed over time. They made offerings, they showed respect, and over the years, they forgot the rules. Until she wasn't guarding, but punishing. Faisal murmured. Zach nodded. She became she who eats prayers. That's what some elders call them. Spirits who were once honored, but when the worship stops, they don't disappear. They hunger. It made sense. The bowl of rice, the repeated deliveries, the insistence on ritual. Never stopped the ritual. They weren't ghost stories, they were maintenance instructions. And when the offering stopped, so did the silence. Faisal opened his bag and placed the mirror shard on the table. Zach didn't flinch. Instead, he leaned in, eyes narrowing. "You kept it. I think she wants me to. Not because she's haunting me, but because I finished it." Zach was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "Or maybe she's not done. Maybe you're just the last one she trusted." That night, Faisal sat on his balcony watching the city lights flicker beneath the low-hanging clouds. The mirror shard sat beside him, wrapped in cloth. He didn't open it, but he could feel it, gently pulsing like a heartbeat. Not evil, not threatening, just present. And in the stillness, a memory returned, one he hadn't let himself fully process. Back in the ritual room, just before the doll caught flame, he had heard something. Not a scream, not a whisper. A prayer. A child's voice. Soft, shaking. "Please don't leave me here." He didn't know if it had been her voice, or someone else trapped with her. But it hadn't been angry. It had been afraid. And that changed everything. Faisal started researching old rites. He read forums on temple hauntings, studied regional rituals, and even tracked down old books from out-of-print authors who had studied forgotten Malaysian spiritual practices. The deeper he went, the more he found similar patterns. Spirits tied to places, caretaker offerings, cursed locations where rituals were halted halfway. And all of them ended with one common warning. Never promise what you do not complete. Never leave a hungry God alone. One story stood out. A woman who vanished in a hospital during a renovation.
No body, just a bloodied scarf and a row of salt lines on the floor. The next year, a nurse disappeared, then a patient. Each time, a missing offering, a failed ritual. Until a monk from a forgotten monastery came and lit a single bowl of rice with sandalwood oil and chanted, "Eat and rest. You are seen again." Faisal copied the chant onto a slip of paper. He didn't know why. Maybe it was instinct, maybe fear, or maybe he just didn't want to forget. Because that's the real danger, wasn't it? Forgetting. That's how she was created in the first place. Not from death, but from neglect. The next night, the mirror shard shimmered faintly. No vision, no whisper, just a pulse of silver light. Faisal lit a stick of incense. He placed it beside the shard. He placed a bowl of rice next to it, still steaming, and he whispered, almost without realizing, "Eat and rest. You are seen again." The smoke curled upward, the air shifted, and something in the room relaxed, like a sigh from behind the walls. She wasn't gone, but she wasn't angry anymore. Not with him. And so the ritual began again, but not for fear, not for protection, for memory. Once a week, Faisal set a bowl of rice beside the mirror shard. He didn't speak. He didn't ask. He just offered. And each time the rice steamed longer than it should. Each time the room grew still, grateful, warm. He never saw her again, not fully, but sometimes, in the corner of his vision, he would glimpse a shadow standing near the mirror, not moving, not reaching, just watching. And he'd nod, a silent acknowledgement, an agreement. She would guard, and he would remember. They called her a ghost. They called her a curse. But Faisal knew the truth. She was a guardian forgotten, a spirit once sacred, now starving. Not evil, just lonely. And now, finally, full.
The app never sent him another order, not to Majestic Heights, not to 6F. In fact, after that night, the night Faisal whispered, "Eat and rest, you are seen again," something strange happened. His delivery app crashed. When he reopened it, the interface had reset entirely. No history, no earnings, no profile, as if he had never worked a single shift. He emailed support. They replied within minutes. "There is no account registered under that email or phone number. Please create a new profile." He blinked at the screen. Impossible. He'd made over 700 deliveries in the past year, had reviews, tips, even bonuses. Gone. Erased. Not deactivated, deleted. He checked his gallery, his maps, his trip logs. All gone. Even the photo of the circle on the ritual floor. Gone. Even the screenshot of the article about Surrey. Gone. Like the entire experience had been pulled out by the root. But the mirror shard still remained, wrapped in cloth, resting on the shelf, cool to the touch, quiet. He returned to Majestic Heights one more time, not with fear, not to investigate, but to see if it still stood. It did. Same faded concrete, same vines coiled up the walls,
same crooked sign at the entrance. But something felt different. The building no longer hummed, no longer strained at its seams. It felt settled. He approached the guardhouse. An old man looked up and waved lazily, not recognizing him. Faisal asked, "Has anyone reported strange things here, Unit 6F?" The guard looked confused. "There is no 6F. Block skips the 6th. Construction error or something." "What about service stairwells, special deliveries?" The guard shrugged. "No such thing. Deliveries stop at level 5 or go to level 7. You must be thinking of a different block." He thanked him and walked away. As he turned the corner, he glanced back up at the building, at the windows. One by one, they reflected the dull light of the overcast sky, gray panes staring outward like dead eyes. All except one, the 6th window up. There was no unit there, no floor. But in the reflection, just for a breath, Faisal saw a figure standing behind the glass, not waving, not beckoning, just watching. And behind her, a small, steaming bowl of rice. That night, Faisal returned home and opened a blank notebook. He started to write, not about her, not yet, but about the ritual, the authoring, the structure, the timeline, the dates, the names. He wrote everything he remembered, because he realized something. The deliveries were never meant to arrive. They were meant to be made. The ritual wasn't about food. It was about acknowledgement, a cycle, a rhythm. And when it was broken, when no one came, she did. He remembered what Zach had said, "Never promise what you do not complete. Never leave a hungry God alone." So he made a decision. If no one else would remember her, he would. In time, he stopped writing for work. He took a job at a second-hand bookstore. Small, quiet, cash only. He liked it. The stillness reminded him of the hours before dawn, when the world hadn't yet decided what it wanted to be. He kept the mirror shard in the back room, wrapped in red cloth, unbroken. And once a week, just as the sun dipped behind the buildings, he'd place a bowl of rice beside it, steam rising in curls, silent, simple. And he'd say, "Eat and rest. You are seen again." Sometimes he'd see customers pause near the back room, just stand there, as if hearing something faint behind the walls, a whisper, a breath, a woman humming to herself through the mirror. And sometimes, only sometimes, the rice would be gone before morning. Faisal never tried to explain it, not to himself, not to anyone else. Some stories aren't meant to be explained, only honored. He never delivered another order to 6F, but late at night, when his phone buzzes with a system glitch, when the screen flickers for just a second, and the words, "You already accepted," flash before vanishing, he doesn't panic. He smiles, because he understands now. The delivery was never to the unit, never to the floor. It was to her, and she's no longer waiting. She's home.
There are moments when the body moves, but the soul lags behind. When you're awake, but not present. Speaking, but not thinking. That's what it felt like to Faisal in the days that followed. He was there, in his apartment, at work, among people, but something in him remained elsewhere. Some part of him was still riding the stairwell to 6F. He first noticed it while cycling home from the bookstore. He didn't remember choosing to cycle that night, didn't remember bringing his bike,
didn't remember unlocking it. But there he was, gliding through the quiet streets just after midnight. His bag was slung across his back. Heavy, too heavy. He reached behind, confused. It was his old delivery bag, but he'd thrown that away, hadn't he? He stopped under a streetlight, heart hammering in his chest, unzipped it. Inside, a single item wrapped in brown paper, just like the old orders. No name, no receipt, no address, just a note, written in elegant, spidery script. She's still hungry. He dropped the bag. It hit the ground with a soft, wet thump. When he opened it again, it was empty. No parcel, no note. Gone. He didn't tell anyone. What could he say? That a ghost had followed him into his new life? That something sacred had chosen him? That sometimes he forgot who he was? The next incident came 2 days later, at the bookstore. He was ringing up a customer when he heard it. The ping, not from the till, not from a phone, from inside the walls. That same metallic chime the app used, followed by a voice, soft, synthetic, and eerily familiar. New order received. He froze. The customer asked if he was okay. He blinked, nodded, finished the transaction with shaking hands. Later that night, he found his reflection in the shop's front window, but something was off. His body was still, but the reflection was swaying back and forth, like a rider waiting for a light to change. He whispered, "What do you want from me?" The reflection stopped, tilted its head, then smiled, not cruelly, just knowingly. The worst moment came in a dream, except he didn't think it was a dream. He was back on his motorbike, same jacket, same route, same sharp wind in his face, but he wasn't choosing where to go. His hands turned the handlebars on their own. His feet shifted gears without thought. And the city was wrong, empty, dark, silent. Not Kuala Lumpur, not anywhere. Just streets folding in on themselves. He followed the turns, and every time he reached a junction, the sign pointed the same way, 6F. He stopped at an old building, not majestic heights, but similar. The kind of high-rise you see 1,000 of, never noticing. Unmarked, unremarkable. But he knew what it was. He entered, climbed the stairs, and just as he reached the 6th landing, he turned around. Behind him, 100 other riders, silent, expressionless, holding parcels that oozed something dark. Their eyes were mirrors. He woke up screaming. Sweat drenched his sheets. The mirror shard on the shelf had cracked slightly down the center. He knew now. She hadn't left him. She had moved into him. Possession was the wrong word. This wasn't like a horror movie. No sudden voices, no head spinning, no blood on the walls. It was slower, gentler, like being hollowed out by something sacred and unknowable, like sharing your body with a memory, like becoming a vessel. Zach confirmed it one quiet evening. They sat together under the flickering street lamp outside the 7-Eleven. Faisal said nothing. Zach just looked at him and said, "She's inside you now." Faisal nodded. "I think she always was." Zach handed him a small pouch of white ash. "Keep this in your pocket, from a burnt offering. It'll keep her calm, as long as you feed her." Feed her how? By remembering, by obeying the call when it comes. Faisal was quiet, then said, "What happens if I don't?" Zach's eyes were solemn. "She rides you." That night, Faisal cleaned out his old delivery bag, not to use it again, but to honor it. He placed the mirror shard inside, wrapped in red cloth, alongside a pouch of ash, a stick of incense, and a note that simply read, "You are seen." He zipped it shut and set it beside his bed, not as a burden, as a promise. Because he understood now. It wasn't that he was possessed, he was entrusted. And sometimes, late at night, when the world was quiet, when no bikes buzzed past his flat, he would feel the bag tremble gently. Not violently, not in anger, just enough, as if to say, "It's time." And he would rise. No questions, no resistance. Helmet, jacket, bag, and he'd ride through silent streets to forgotten places, making deliveries no one asked for, to doors no one remembered, to spirits who had been waiting far too long. Not every haunting wants to be feared. Some just want to be fed, and some just want to be heard. It began as a whisper in the back of his mind. Soft, persistent. Not in words, but in memory. A feeling, a tug, as if something was calling from beneath the concrete, from beneath the forgotten. Faisal had started dreaming in symbols, circles, strings, ash, a doll with no face, a door that would not open, and a chant half remembered. Not nightmares, not quite, just messages, sent through the language of the unfinished. One morning, he woke with blood on his fingers, not from pain, not from violence. He had been writing in his sleep. The wall next to his bed was covered in charcoal streaks, circles, names, symbols he didn't recognize but felt familiar. And at the center of it all, written in his own looping handwriting, "She's waiting for it to end properly." He returned to Zach. They sat under the trees behind the old mosque, where stray cats curled between gravestones and the wind carried the scent of burnt leaves. Faisal didn't speak. He just handed Zach a photo he'd taken of the wall. Zach stared at it for a long time, then whispered, "They never closed it, did they?" Faisal shook his head. "No, they sealed her in, but they never finished the rite." Zach's hands trembled slightly. They didn't bind her. They abandoned her. Faisal had read enough to understand. In ancient rites, especially those meant to contain wandering spirits or vengeful dead, completion mattered more than perfection. Everything had to be closed. If a circle was drawn, it had to be sealed. If an offering was made, it had to be acknowledged. If a name was spoken, it had to be released. The workers who built majestic heights tried to silence her, but halfway through the ritual, the site was shut down. Funding pulled, schedules rushed, people scared, and the room, the one filled with mirrors and ash, was left open. And she had remained there ever since, waiting, not for vengeance, for closure. That night, Faisal went back one final time, not to confront her, but to finish it. He entered through the maintenance gate, the same one he had forced open weeks ago. The air felt different now, still heavy, but no longer hostile, like a temple long neglected, but ready to be used again. He climbed the stairwell, past the familiar red paint, reached level 6F, and stepped into the ritual floor. The room was intact, empty, but alive. The circle was still faintly visible, blackened into the tiles. The mirror fragments still sat along the edges, some cracked, some covered in dust. He knelt, unzipped his old delivery bag, and one by one began setting the right. A fresh bowl of rice, a single lit candle, a strip of red cloth, a mirror shard placed at the center of the circle, and last, the pouch of ash. He drew the lines, not perfectly, but with intention. He whispered the chant he had memorized. Eat and rest, you are seen again. We finish what they could not. This circle is closed. The air shifted. The room grew colder, but not violently. She was here. He felt her standing behind him, not watching, witnessing. He didn't look back. He kept his head bowed and spoke the final line. No more deliveries, no more hunger, only peace. The flame bent sideways, then extinguished itself. The rice bowl cracked, not shattered, just cracked. The circle pulsed once with soft red light, then faded. He waited, but nothing happened. No scream, no shadow, no curse. Just quiet. For the first time, true quiet. He looked up and saw her reflection in the mirror shard. She was no longer twisted, no longer crawling, just standing, straight, still, hair falling like a curtain around her face. She lifted a hand, not in warning, in gratitude, and slowly vanished. The mirror shard dulled, the air warmed. The rite was complete. He sealed the door behind him, marked it with red, and for the first time, when he descended the stairs of 6F, he didn't feel watched. He felt walked with, like someone was seeing him off, not chasing. Back home, he placed the mirror shard on his altar shelf. He never used it again, never heard her voice, never saw another order. The app stayed quiet. The streets felt lighter. And the ghost in the stairwell, she had been delivered at last.
It was supposed to be over. The ritual completed, the mirror sealed, the offering made. Faisal had slept that night, for the first time in weeks, without dreams. He woke to the gentle glow of morning light spilling across his floor. No pings, no whispers, no shadow behind the curtain. Just peace. But peace, he would learn, is not the same as closure. The first sign came quietly. A message. Not on his phone, on his window. Written in the morning condensation. One left. Faisal stood frozen, breath fogging the glass, slowly washing away the words before he could decide if they were real. Later that day, he passed a group of delivery riders outside a cafe, laughing, sharing stories. He smiled at them, then stopped. One of them was wearing his old jacket, the exact one, frayed at the sleeves, the same green courier logo, the same white scratch along the right arm from when he'd scraped against the gate near Jalan Suleiman. But he hadn't sold it. He had burned it. He stepped closer. The rider turned to look at him. No face, just hair, black, wet, hanging over pale skin. The rider tilted its head, slightly, slowly.
and whispered, "You forgot her." That night, Faisal sat in his room with every light on. The mirror shard lay wrapped in its cloth on the altar, unmoving. But something pulsed behind his eyes, something unfinished. He opened the notebook where he'd written every detail of the haunting, and there, between 2 pages, he found a scrap of paper he didn't remember adding. On it, in the same spidery script from the first delivery note, "The last offering was never delivered. She is still waiting. This is your final climb." He tried to ignore it. He tried to believe it was over, but the signs kept coming. Scratches on the ceiling, red thread tied to his doorknob, footsteps on the fire escape. And one morning, the bowl of rice on his altar was missing. The cloth was soaked with black water, and his phone screen, dead for days, flickered to life with one final message: "You already accepted." He packed his bag one last time, not with fear, with understanding. The last offering had never reached her, and until it did, her ritual would never truly rest. It was raining again, not heavy, not loud, just enough to blur the city. Faisal rode through the wet streets like a ghost himself. No destination input, no GPS, just the memory of where she waited. Majestic Heights was quieter than ever. No lights in the windows, no cars outside, no guard in the booth. It looked abandoned, as if the world had finally decided to forget it altogether. Faisal passed through the gates, entered the stairwell. The air smelled of wet ash and old breath. Each step felt heavier, each landing longer, but he kept going. Up past the phantom floor numbers, to the space that didn't exist, to 6F. When he reached the door, it was already open. Not wide, just enough. Enough to say, "We've been expecting you." Inside, the hallway was gone. There was only the room, the ritual room, but bare now. No mirrors, no candles, just an open space. And at the center, a single, unlit bowl of rice, untouched, waiting. She was there, not crawling, not looming, just there, sitting cross-legged beside the bowl, face hidden, hair long, arms resting in her lap, like a widow in eternal mourning. Faisal stepped forward slowly. He didn't speak. He didn't flinch. He simply took the pouch from his bag, opened it, and poured the last of the ash around the bowl. Then he sat across from her and whispered, "This time, it will arrive." She lifted her head, and for the first time, he saw her eyes. Not black, not hollow, just tired. Eyes that had waited too long to be remembered. Eyes that no longer wanted to haunt, only to be seen. She reached forward, touched the edge of the bowl, and the flame lit by itself. Soft, blue, then red, then gold. The room pulsed, not violently, like a heart finally letting go. The walls shook, dust fell, the ceiling cracked, and the bowl split in two,
rice spilling across the floor like white petals. Her body began to fade, gently, piece by piece, like morning mist. She looked at him once more and said one final word, a whisper he heard in his bones. "Thank you." Then she was gone. The flame extinguished, the air stilled, and Faisal stood alone in the empty space where grief had once made a home. He descended the stairs without looking back. Outside, the rain had stopped. The sky was gray, but gentler. The streets no longer shimmered like glass, just stone, just pavement, just real. The last delivery had been made, and it had finally arrived. There are stories that die quietly. They fade, disappear, become whispers or worse, jokes. Then there are stories like Faisal's, the ones that never end, because they never wanted to be told, only remembered. No one knows what happened to him. He stopped showing up at the bookstore, didn't answer texts, didn't renew his lease. His room, when the landlord opened it weeks later, was perfectly clean, everything in its place, except one thing. A brown courier bag resting on the bed. Inside, a red cloth, a burnt rice bowl, a cracked mirror shard, and a single note. Delivered. Do not reopen. Majestic Heights still stands, half abandoned, half occupied. No one talks about 6F anymore. Most say it never existed. The elevator skips it. The building directory never listed it. And if you ask the security guards about it, they'll just shake their heads and mumble something about old floors being sealed for maintenance. But some nights, especially Fridays, if you pass by Block A just after midnight, you might hear it, a buzz, faint, mechanical, like the vibration of a phone that isn't there, followed by footsteps on the stairs, soft, deliberate, then a knock on a door that's not supposed to exist. They say a new order shows up in the system from time to time. Just one. Same coordinates, same route, same note. Unit 6F, service access only. No payout listed, no timer, no cancel option. Just one button. Accept. Riders who click it say the app freezes, then reboots. When they check again, the order is gone, but their location history shows one more completed trip. And their camera roll, it shows a photo, blurry, rainy, of a hallway bathed in red light, and a figure standing just out of frame. Long hair, arms too long, face unfinished. Every time, the figure is closer than the last. And if you zoom in just right, you'll see someone in the photo's reflection. Not the rider, someone else. A man in a green jacket, helmet in one hand, and a mirror shard in the other. And on his back, an empty bag. They say he doesn't speak, just walks the halls of forgotten places, delivering to units no one lives in, riding down roads no one builds, stopping at buildings no one owns. They call him the last rider, or the man who delivers to no one. He isn't cursed. He isn't dead. He's just bound. A memory carrying other memories. The final step in a ritual no one dares interrupt again. Because every ghost needs a messenger, and every forgotten spirit needs to be seen. So if you're a rider, and your phone buzzes with an order that disappears before you open it, if you see a floor button on an elevator that shouldn't be there, if you find a bowl of rice still steaming in an empty hallway, walk away. Don't accept. Don't knock. Don't look too closely in the mirrors, because she isn't angry anymore. But she still waits, and he still rides. For those who forget, there will always be someone who remembers. A man who climbs when no one else will. A man who delivers to no one, so that no one else ever has to. Delivered. Do not reopen.